So you want to graph in LoggerPro. Step one is install LoggerPro. I've already got it installed. I've already got it open. But if you want to see how to install LoggerPro, get in touch with me and I'll send you a link to download it and I'll help you install it. That's a different video. This video, we're going to assume that you already have it installed and running. It'll be a program on your computer. It's not in a web browser. You probably have your data recorded in a Google Sheet. If you need to do anything to your data, like make a new column, like if you have to do any kind of data analysis, I would recommend doing it in Google Sheets first because it's way easier to do. The LoggerPro spreadsheet is not really a fully functioning spreadsheet. The strengths of LoggerPro are in easily getting things on graphs and changing the graph, but these columns are not great at creating new columns that are based on the old columns. It's just very tedious. It's a lot easier to do it in Google Sheets, and you probably already know how. So if you need to do any manipulation, do it in Google Sheets first. And get it to the point where you have two data columns that you want to graph. Highlight the data columns, actually just the numbers, and copy. Go to LoggerPro, into this part that looks like a spreadsheet, and paste. The first thing you'll see is that the points on the graph pop up. The scale on the axes is usually not perfect. You have to make it do an auto scale. But the first thing you want to do is name your data sets. So it defaults to X and Y. Mine are length and time period. So you can right click on the column header, go to column options, dataset X. You can name it, I think this one was length. Give it a short name, like a variable name. Give it units, mine are in meters. Hit done. And then do the same thing for the other column. Dataset Y is going to be time period, capital T, measured in seconds. And now, if you don't like the order, it's really easy at this point to change what's on which axis. You can just click the name and click the other data column, and it'll put it for you. So if it pops up in the wrong order, it's really easy to switch what's on what. But I want time period on Y and length on the X-axis. The next thing we're going to do is auto scale the axes, so there's not all this white space over here in the middle of nowhere. So go down, move the mouse until you see this little symbol, and it looks like it says click and drag to scroll the values. You can move the x-axis where the 0 is. You can do the same thing with the y-axis. You can also double click and it'll bring up some options. Click on axis options. The y-axis options are right here. Scaling. The default only auto scales whenever there's a data point that goes off the graph. If you want to change it, you can click auto scale and it will fit the actual data. If you want to make sure 0 is included, you can do auto scale from 0. So I'm going to do that, and you can see that even though the lowest y value is up here at 0.6, 0.6 is the lowest y value, it included 0 because I picked that option, auto scale from 0. You may want that, you may not want that. That's the y-axis. Let's see. Here's the x-axis down here. Auto scale from 0. Done. Same thing. The lowest x value is 0.1. And it included 0. So you may want to include 0, but if there's a bunch of white space between your data and 0, then you don't need to include it. So if I go back to the options and just pick auto scale, now you can see it decided to include 0 on the x-axis, probably just because the length value is so close to 0. But if your numbers were far from 0, you wouldn't even see it anymore. And that's fine. Just depends on what your numbers are. I kind of don't like that this last data point looks like it's cut off on the x-axis, so maybe I'll go back in and change it to manual and end this at 2.3, just manually. It looks a little better if you can see that it's not right at the end. That's up to you, personal taste, but don't include a whole bunch of extra white space on the end or above or in the beginning. You want your data to take up the whole graph. Next, well, I just realized my data, if I go to Analyze and click on Linear Fit, it kind of is okay around the middle, but you can see at the end and in the beginning that it doesn't really look like this is linear data. Correlation coefficient, the thing that's supposed to be close to 1, is 0.986. I think I can get that better if I try a different, if I manipulate the data and linearize it. And so this data is the time period of a pendulum versus its length with the other variables that might affect it held constant. And I know what that relationship is. In this data, the time period should be proportional to the square root of the length. I'm cheating just because I know what that relationship is, although it's not really cheating. If you look up the theory that explains what your data should be, you can verify that it matches it by linearizing your data accordingly. So I'm going to go back to Google Sheets, and I'm going to make a square root of length column. And I'm going to type an equal sign, SQRT, A2 through A21. Oh wait, no, just A2. And then I need to drag it down like this. And then the period data is going to be the same. It's just B2. It should autofill down. So now I actually want to copy and paste these numbers into LoggerPro. I'm going to skip this step, but you should identify what your uncertainty is. And if you do any calculations like this, you have to propagate that uncertainty through. So really, this is way too many decimal points. I probably don't need this many decimal points. I'm going to skip the calculation because I'm going to show you that in a different video. But let's say it's 3 decimal places. You can highlight the whole column. You can go to Format. You can go to Number. You can go to Custom Number Format, 0.000. Apply, and that gives you 3 decimal places. I just made up 3 decimal places, but there is a set of calculations you can do to figure out what it should be if you know what your uncertainty in length is. And then you take the square root of that length. So I'm going to take these numbers. I'm going to go back to LoggerPro after I copy them. I'm going to overwrite the numbers. Now, like you noticed that there was a linear fit on the data, and it kept it, and it updated it. Now the correlation is 0.9953. That's much better. And this data actually looks like a straight line. I need to rescale the x-axis. Maybe autoscale will work better. Yeah, this looks good. So this is the best fit trend line, and I'm going to label it like that. Let me show you where this came from. Hang on. Let me delete this. Okay, so I want to label this with an annotation. So go to Insert, Text Annotation, Best Fit Linear Trend Line. Something like that. You got to click out of the box, and then you got to click and hold the box to drag it around. It's kind of annoying to get it to do what you want. All right. Move. It's got a little hand. This little hand has to pop up, and then you can drag it, and then you can drag the point of this line and point it there. The reason I'm labeling it is because in just a second I'm going to show you how to get the maximum slope line and the minimum slope line, and things start to look messy if you don't label it. We need error bars. So if I double click on one of those points and go to Options, error bar calculations are right here. I don't want to do percentage. I want to do fixed value. The number you type in this box comes from your own error analysis, which will be in a different video. But you'll come to a conclusion for what your error in the y values and the x values are. So it's not obvious to me if this is going to be. Wait, hang on. Let me get out of there. So if I right click on length and go to dataset length and go to options, here's the error bars for length. So this is based on my calculations. I don't know what they are. Let's say maybe 0.2 and see what that looks like. I'm skipping the actual. Oh, that's way too big. All right, so this is not how you should do it. Don't just throw a number on there and see what it looks like and say that's too big. You should have an actual calculation to back up what you're doing. But again, that's in a different video. So 0.8, maybe 0.8 is what I came up with my very real. Oh, that's worse. What just happened? Length 0.1. All right, that's not amazing, but I'm going to leave it there. And then you probably also have a y uncertainty. Oh, I forgot. I changed what data was in here. It's no longer length. Now it's the square root of length. Square root of length. Square root of meters. There's no great way to put square root here. If you have an exponent, you can do that. Like if it were meters squared. Let me just show you. Meters, you can click this, you can click superscript, you can put it to. That's nice, but for some reason they didn't give you the capability of doing fractional exponents or square roots or anything. So I'm just gonna do square root m for the units. Done. All right, that's a better label. So now we need some error bars on the y data. So I'm going to go right click on the period column, go to the column options for period, click on options, click on error bar calculations, fixed value, and this would be where you have come up with your absolute uncertainty using some other process. So I'm just going to make up a number 0.3. These are rather large error bars, and they look a little messy because they're so big, but let me make them smaller just so it doesn't look so bad. Again, this is not something you should do. Don't just look at them and say, oh, they look big. You make these smaller too, just so it's not so messy looking. But yours should be based on your own estimations, not just changing how it looks. All right, that's a little bit more reasonable looking. The next step would be to get some maximum slope and minimum slope lines to show us a range of possible best fit lines that could go through the error bars. And this is where LoggerPro makes it a lot easier, I think, than in Google Sheets. So you're going to go to Insert, Analyze, Model. Click on the linear option. Click OK, and this line will pop up. You want to right-click on this and go to Linear Fit Options, and there's a very specific checkbox we're going to use called Enable Line Drag. This lets you just click on, so it gives you these three markers on the line. If you click the middle one, it moves the entire line up and down, sort of like adjusting the y-intercept, but not the slope. And then these other two lines will let you rotate it. I'm not entirely sure what the center of the rotation is, but when you start messing with it, you'll see. Oh, like when I grab this one, it looks like the end of the line is fixed right here, and the whole line rotates around this point at the very end. When I grab this line, it looks like the left side is fixed. That's kind of weird, but you can basically just move this line so that it goes through. These error bars really define a little box of uncertainty around each point. And so the bottom right corner of this box is about right here. So this line's going through there. Then I'm going to make this side go through the top error bar box, like right there, and I'm done. You can just eyeball it, and now it'll tell you the slope and the y-intercept for that model. Now these lines look very similar, and these boxes are going to get confusing, so I'm going to insert text annotation. We'll call this one max slope, and then drag this down here and label this so that they know what they're talking about, so that they know what I'm talking about. And then another thing you can do is right-click on the model, go to Linear Fit Options, and change the appearance, the color, to something like, I don't know, green. Okay, and it actually changes the line color too. I'm going to leave the best fit line black. And then I need a minimum slope line. So analyze, model, do another linear, and here's the min slope line. Before I adjust it, I want to go back to the max slope, right click, options, and uncheck the drag line, because now that I have the max slope line where I want it, I don't want to accidentally grab it and move it. Now this is going to be my minimum slope fit, so go to the options, drag line. Now make the top go through the bottom of this error box up here, and then maybe the top corner of this error box over here. And that's going to give me a smallest slope of a line that might go through my error points, my points. Right click, options, uncheck that drag line because I don't want to accidentally move it now. And then I do need to insert another annotation, text annotation, min slope, drag it over here, drag the tip of this over here. And that's a pretty good grade. It looks messy, but you can see the data. You can see that there are these 3 lines going through it. You can see the best fit trend line numbers, and you can see the min slope and max slope numbers. So this is a perfect graph to include in your IA, just as it is right here. The best way to get this into a Word document or Google Docs is make sure that you have the graph selected. So when I click on the table, these little resize boxes show up on the edges, so I know I have the table selected. So if I click on the graph, I know I have the graph selected because I can see these little resize markers. And then I'm going to right click, copy, go to Microsoft Word, paste, and it pastes it pretty well as an image. I think that's probably the best way. You can just use a screenshot, I suppose. So on Windows, Command-Shift-S gives you the ability to take a screenshot. You'll probably get roughly the same results doing, let me see what this looks like. So here's my screenshot. Here's the copy and paste. I don't know if they're too different. The quality is about the same. It's legible either way. I did accidentally capture extra stuff on the outside, so if you're going to do a screenshot, make sure it looks nice. Copying it, I think, is the best way. Definitely don't take a picture with your phone and then insert that picture. That would look terrible. But you want to make sure that the font size is also roughly the same as what you're using in your paper. And this step is a little bit of a headache because I notice usually if you just go with the default font from LoggerPro, it might be a little small. You can change it if you right click on the options, go to appearance. You can change this font number to match what you're probably going to actually use. And it needs to, it looks weird if your whole paper is in 12-point font and then everything on the graph is 8-point font and nobody can read it. Another thing is usually graphs in scientific papers are not rectangle or not squares, and they're certainly usually not taller than they are wider. So you can resize. In LoggerPro, you can just click a corner and resize it to roughly look 4x3, or a typical format that's a little less strange looking. But it doesn't really matter. No one cares if your graph is a square. But this just looks more like a normal graph. And you're going to have to rearrange the elements on it so you can see everything. But just do this. Take some time to make it look nice. Don't hide things behind these boxes. Change the font size of each box. There is a section on the IA criteria called communication, and if it's very hard to read things or see things, you'll get docked points.